Hey, the issue I want to talk about I may have covered before, but I can't quite remember. I make a lot of videos, and I guess I'm gonna have to get some more control over that. I tend to make videos just spontaneously when something's on my mind. I don't really give a lot of thought to it because I always speak candidly. None of these videos are particularly planned. So if I have made this before, apologies, but it's an important subject, I believe. Anyway, the video which I'm going to discuss is somewhat disturbing, at least in my opinion it is. It's from 2012 and it's somewhere in China, but the video doesn't really specify where. And basically, the supposed background of this story is that a foreign man, some are saying he's American, but there isn't really any confirmation of that. The point is he's a white guy, he's foreign, um, allegedly assaulted a woman. He spat on her apparently. Now, one thing I always make clear when I'm talking about videos, I wasn't there, so he may well have done that. I wasn't there. I don't know the exact context in that sense, but I still think it's valid that when videos are put online, you can judge them on face value as well. What I see in that video is, anyway, what happened was a mob surrounded the man, and it got quite ugly, and the police had to move in to calm the mob down, supposedly calm the alleged victim down, and stop the mob from basically killing this guy. They broke the windows on a car, and it was pretty ugly to watch. Anyway, there's a notable contrast between the comment on the comment section. Non-Chinese, and not just Western non-Chinese, but other Asians as well, are generally saying that it's disgraceful that this mob is surrounding the guy. And one of the main themes, and this is something I absolutely agree with, is that had that been a Chinese guy, they wouldn't care. That I guarantee you, because violence against women is a big problem in China. It happens very frequently, and there's plenty of videos online showing husbands beating up their wives in public, and you may get one or two people sort of saying like trying to get the guy to calm down or something, but you definitely don't get the mob mentality in the same way. Um, China may have been open since 1978, broadly speaking, but in many ways it's still an incredibly nationalistic and clannish country. And there's one aspect I really don't like about China. Don't get me wrong, there's many things I do like about China, but this is one aspect I don't. Had something similar happened in the West, let's say for the sake of argument, a Chinese person had been accused of a crime in Britain or America, and a mob of local people surrounded that person and yelled at them and tried to beat them up and all the rest of it. It would be a national disgrace. It would be on headline news, and it would be there'd be a lot of soul searching like about how racist we are. In China, casual racism is pretty much acceptable. In other words, treating a foreigner that way simply because he's a foreigner, um, and I do say simply because he's a foreigner, because with or without the crime, the bottom line is they would not be doing that with a Chinese guy. That's a fact. Um, Now, even if they did do it with a Chinese guy, it would be at least it would be that nationalism aspect taken away. But I still have a problem with mob mentality in general because I think, put it this way, if the guy was guilty, and I'm not saying he's innocent, he may well have had a bad attitude and thought he could do that to them and whatever. If that's the case, then he can be arrested, he can face charges. But for this mob to take it upon themselves to surround the guy, it's it's disgusting, quite frankly. And I'd like to see just one or two Chinese people have the decency to condemn that behavior. Um, I'm sure there are people out there, I'm sure there's Chinese who are open-minded enough to see that it's wrong, but unfortunately, you get predictable nationalists coming on and defending it. I'm pleased to say that we're in the minority. People were criticizing them for being so foolish and so um, no, one guy that replied to my comment said, I asked him to provide evidence that the man was guilty. he said that he could understand what they were saying. Well, I don't really think that's evidence. Some others were saying they were actually there and the man was guilty. But again, even if he was guilty, okay, let the police arrest him, let the police deal with him, charge him, whatever. Um, Not that a Chinese man would be charged, because there's actually a lot of apathy towards domestic violence in China. Um, so the double standards here really piss me off, actually, to be quite candid about it. And I think that China as a nation does need to look at itself and look at its attitudes in this sort of thing. Um, I even remember an acquaintance of mine who happened to be a member of the party, incidentally. We were debating about a wide range of things. She even admitted that there are some social areas that China needs to improve. So I think there is awareness that there's a problem here. Um, Mob mentality is a very ugly thing. And just in case anyone thinks I'm biased, if a Chinese person found themselves a victim of a mob in the West, I would be the first to condemn it. Okay? So there's no bias on my part because I hold exactly the same standards the world over. I think mob mentality is a very ugly thing. A lack of education may be an explanation for it, but it's not an excuse to allow it to happen. Um, and the whole thing makes me very uncomfortable. But it also serves as a warning to foreigners going to China. I don't want to put anyone off because most visits are trouble free and it is a pretty safe country to visit. But you do have to be very careful that if you're on your own and then you're in quite a local area, um, then just be wary about all your interactions. And unfortunately, if someone's ripping you off, it's best not not to make a big scene about it, because unfortunately, the locals will definitely side with that person. Scams are extremely common in China. Some people are saying this was a scam incidentally. I don't know if it was or not. If it was, that's despicable. But I don't know, so I'm not going to say either way. But I will say one thing though, I do find it a little bit hard to believe, and this is not me saying that I completely don't believe it, but I find it hard to believe that a foreigner would take a risk of assaulting a local Chinese because it would be a very, very foolish thing to do. There are some outsiders who could be a bit tactless and stupid when they go over there, but I think most people would be sensible enough to realize that it's a very stupid thing to do. Just as most Chinese coming to the West know that they have to behave in our society, most Westerners actually, contrary nationalist claims, most Westerners are not badly behaved. I know that for a fact because of all the colleagues that I was working with. Uh, None of them had major problems. The only time I saw someone behaving badly was when I saw an American girl kind of drinking too much and throwing up, and she was making a bit of a scene of herself. But that is honestly the only time I saw someone really being disrespectful. I mean, certainly speaking for myself, I always made sure that I was polite and I abided by local customs and I tried to speak Chinese and I tried to be respectful. I think that's the right way to go about it. But um, I would just like to see some Chinese person condemn this. That would be nice, you know?